Coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast, we are going to rank the best possible draft day trades for the Philadelphia Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. And thanks for making the Locked On Podcast Network the number one sports podcast network. On today's episode, we are going to rank the top 5 best possible draft day trades for the Philadelphia Eagles in the first 3 rounds. Plus, the A.J. Brown trade leverage wars. We got to continue to talk about that and why I don't believe that the Eagles need to replace the wide receiver 1 position if A.J. Brown is traded. So this start with draft day trades, because with Howie Roseman, those tend to happen, whether it's a trade up the board in the first round, whether it's a trade down. When it comes to day 2 and day 3, this guy never sits still. 2 years ago in the 2024 NFL draft, Howie Roseman actually broke the record for most trades in a single draft period in the history of the NFL. Like, this is the guy that started the trade era in the NFL. He also traded for A.J. Brown in the first round on draft day. So he has traded for veteran stars on draft day. Anything could happen. So we're going to rank the top 5 best possible trade outcomes, not just on day 1, but also on day 2, whether there's a first round pick exchanged or a second or a third. We're going to get into that now. And to me, the number 1 trade that I'm rooting to see happen, over trading up for a wide receiver prospect in the first round, over trading up for a wide receiver prospect in the second or third. I want to see this football team trade for Brian Thomas Jr. of the Jacksonville Jaguars more than anything at this position. I would love to see them say, here's the 54th overall pick in the second round. Give us Brian Thomas Jr., who has 2 more years left on his rookie contract, plus a 5th-year option because he was a first-round pick a couple years ago. So the Eagles still would have 3 years of team control of that rookie deal. Give us Brian Thomas Jr., who's coming off a down year, but 2 years ago was the best rookie receiver in the NFL. This is a guy that has it all. He has size. He has elite speed, field stretching ability. He is a very productive wide receiver on the outside. So if you trade away A.J. Brown, Brian Thomas can win on the outside. This is not a slot-dependent player. He is very explosive after the catch. He tends to have good hands. Last year was a problem. I think there was a huge confidence issue with BTJ. I think getting used to that scheme with Liam Cohen took him a while, but I thought as the season went on last year, and I watched a lot of Jacksonville Jaguars football down the stretch. I was just very intrigued by that football team. I did see BTJ, who I also owned in fantasy, so that is why I watched them a lot as well, but I digress. BTJ got a lot better as the year went on, and I just think when you combine proven ability, former first-round status, he still has 3 years of cheap money on a rookie deal with a 5th-year option included, the talent, the production, the draft pedigree, the contract. I just think if they lose A.J. Brown this year, and I think they will, Brian Thomas, I don't know, I'm rooting for that over any other outcome when it comes to a big wide receiver move, over trading for Marvin Harrison Jr., over trading up for, an Omar Cooper Jr., who you guys know I love, but I'd rather have BTJ over Jordan Tyson, over, taking somebody like Chris Bell in the second round. I don't know, me personally, that's my favorite trade idea. In the Jaguars right now, they might not be quote unquote looking to move BTJ, but think about it. They extended Jacoby Myers' contract this offseason after trading for him at the deadline. Parker Washington broke out the second half of the year. He was the Jaguars' best weapon in the passing game. And they do still have Travis Hunter. Are they really going to give up on Travis Hunter being a star receiver and corner just 7 games into his career? They traded up. They gave up crazy assets to get Travis Hunter in the first round of the 2024-25 NFL draft with the idea of him being a 2-way player. It sounds like they're going to play him full-time at cornerback, and BTJ could be one of your top 3 receivers in that scenario. But I just have a hard time believing that they're just going to completely scrap that idea already 7 or 8 games into Travis Hunter's career. So I think for the right price, Brian Thomas Jr. can be had, and a second-round pick at 54, considering the down year he had last year and the lack of leverage the Jaguars have with all the weapons they have at receiver. I don't know. I think that could be had for the Philadelphia Eagles. And I think Brian Thomas Jr. for a second is my favorite trade idea. My second favorite trade idea, I didn't want to put this one first, even though it's the best kind of, return that you could get in a trade, but I don't think it's going to happen. So I didn't want to rank it number one. I don't think it's very realistic, but AJ Brown for the 13th overall selection in the first round, which is owned by the Los Angeles Rams. I could see this happening only in one scenario where the Rams are really nervous about Puka Nacua off the field. Devontae Adams, they don't think is going to hold up. We already know, according to Adam Schefter yesterday morning, the Eagles and Rams were very close to getting a deal done that involved A.J. Brown. The Rams told Devontae Adams that they were negotiating with the Eagles for A.J., that they were also shopping Devontae Adams. I think Adams maybe could have came back in that trade with the Eagles. That, or maybe the 13th overall pick was involved. I just have a really hard time believing, and I would have hated if they did this, without getting a 13th overall pick kind of value or Devontae Adams. I just have a really hard time believing that Howie Roseman was going to send A.J. Brown to maybe their biggest competitor in the NFC this year. If it's not Seattle, it's L.A. for something that's not like pick 13 or Devontae Adams in a first or a second rounder. So for me, it's like, I don't want to trade AJ, but if they do, what's the best possible outcome? You get pick 13. And I highly, highly doubt the Rams would give that up. That's probably why a trade did not happen. But if that happened, wow. I mean, that is like as good as you can do in an AJ Brown trade. So that would be number two. I don't think that's going to happen. Trade talks as of right now are dead between the Eagles and the Rams. But this is one of those scenarios where I would trade AJ Brown pre-June 1st. I would eat over $40 million in dead cap, which you do have in cap space right now. So you could kind of stomach that blow. To me, like, this is the only scenario where I would even consider doing it before June 1st. And if they did, 13 overall could get you a really good draft prospect. That could get you a wide receiver, maybe the top guy on the board or top two. It could get you the best tackle prospect you want, or Kenyon Sadiq, an edge rusher, whatever, safety that might be available. Like maybe Caleb Downs would be there. That would be number two for me behind getting Brian Thomas Jr. The number three would be trading up for Jordan Tyson or Omar Cooper Jr. I think this is more realistic than trading for Brian Thomas. For me, Jordan Tyson would be the new version of in 2023 when the Eagles traded up for Jalen Carter, in 2024 when Quinyon Mitchell fell into their lap and they didn't even need to trade up. This could be that third instance in the last 3 to 4 years where you say, how the hell did that prospect fall to Howie Roseman? But Jordan Tyson is kind of suffering from how long the pre-draft process goes. And I think people are starting to talk themselves out of Jordan Tyson. People are getting a little bit more nervous about his injury history. Daniel Jeremiah insinuated maybe there's some work ethic things there, which could push him down the board. He was somebody that I think he's the number one receiver prospect in this draft. He was somebody at one point I thought could be a top 10 pick, definitely a top 15 overall selection. Well, Jordan Reed this morning from ESPN, a top draft analyst in national media, suggested that he has heard Jordan Tyson could fall into that like 17 to 23 range. And he has heard the Eagles specifically could be eyeing a trade up the board for Jordan Tyson to replace AJ Brown. I just think he is the most complete receiver in this class when it comes to route running, when it comes to setting corners up on an island. I think he's explosive, just such a smooth player in and out of his breaks, good hands. I think he is pretty dynamic as an athlete. I don't know. I think if this happens, that again is one of those narratives of the Eagles won the draft. And if it's not him, Omar Cooper Jr. Jordan Tyson's my number one receiver in this class, but Omar Cooper Jr. is my favorite receiver in this class. So if they trade up for one of those guys on day one, I'm going to be extremely happy. A couple more trades to get into here. At number 4, trading the 68th overall pick in the third round for Jonathan Greenard. The Eagles have been reportedly interested in Greenard now for over a month and a half. They have talked to his agent even about a potential extension, what that would look like if the Eagles do trade for him. Greenard, I think, is one of the most underrated edge rushers in football. They could use that guy next to Nolan Smith and Jalix Hunt. they would have to give him an extension, but getting him at pick 68, and then suddenly your group of 4 edge rushers are Jonathan Greenard, you've got Nolan Smith and Jalix Hunt, and then Arnold Ebiketie as your 4th, maybe with Brandon Graham coming back as well as your 5th. That's a really, really strong group to replace Jalen Phillips. And I don't think, giving up a 3rd-round pick and an extension is a lot, but I don't think it's going to cost you more than a 3rd rounder. I wouldn't give up the 54th overall pick in round 2, which is 22nd overall in that round, but I don't think Minnesota would require that. I think if you offered them pick 68 right now, I think you could probably get that deal done. The question is, how much does Greenard want? Because reports are he probably wants that Odafe Owe, Jalen Phillips, now Trayvon Walker kind of money, which is in between like $25 to $30 million. Are you comfortable with that? If you are, I think a 3rd rounder is pretty good value for, I think, when healthy, elite edge rusher that is extremely underrated in the NFL. And then at number 5 for draft day trades for the Philadelphia Eagles, trading up in the 2nd round for Tennessee wide receiver Chris Brazzell. I think Chris Brazzell could be the perfect complement to Devontae Smith and Hollywood Brown. I think when you look at the style of player he is and what kind of passer Jalen Hurts is, this is a really, really good fit. Just listen to this stat. Chris Brazzell last year at Tennessee had 43% of his career receiving yards come on targets of 20-plus yards down the field. This is one of the best deep threats in this class, and he just so happens to be 6'4". He is a really smooth athlete. He is an underrated route runner. Not the twitchiest guy in the world, not the best run after the catch player, but he really gives me George Pickens, DK Metcalf vibes, where both of those guys were 2nd-round picks and now are 2 of the most explosive, bigger receivers in football. Chris Brazzell with Jalen Hurts, I just think that would be a really strong wide receiver 2 with legit upside, and I think you could probably get him in the form of a small trade-up in the 2nd round, going from, I don't know, like pick 54 to maybe it's 45. Maybe if you can get into the 40s, I think there's a chance he could be on the board still. So those are my top 5 favorite draft day trade ideas for the Philadelphia Eagles. Let me know what you think. Hit us up on X at Locked On Birds. Coming up next, although the Eagles, at times, it seems like they haven't had much leverage in the A.J. Brown trade saga, considering the Dianna Russini story and A.J. Brown's love of the New England Patriots, the Eagles cannot budge on their asking price, even on draft day. I'll tell you why coming up. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is presented by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are here, where every possession matters, every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing a series. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on the action. Here's what I love about it. You can bet just $5, and you're going to get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. The app makes it easy to follow the action with player stats, trends, and matchups all in one place. And during the playoffs, that extra insight really matters when you're looking at stars, role players, and key moments. It just makes the entire playoff experience more engaging from start to finish. So head over to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. Thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. And thanks for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. Guys, if you haven't already, make sure you tune in to our Locked On Eagles Every Dayer Club. Make sure you subscribe. You are going to get our show ad-free each and every day. Plus, you'll become a member of our Discord channel with myself and other Eagles fans that listen to this show. If you're interested, click the link in the show notes or head over to lockedoneagles.supercast.com. All right, let's talk a little bit more about the A.J. Brown trade front after a massive, massive new wrinkle was added yesterday when it comes to the Dianna Russini-Mike Vrabel part of this story. And for me, I can't stop thinking about what Mark Farzetta said on our squad show a couple weeks ago that, we're talking about draft day trades, and a lot of it involves the Eagles going after a wide receiver. And according to a lot of NFL insiders and draft analysts, they've heard the Eagles are interested in trading up for a pass catcher in round 1. Jordan Tyson has been the guy that is being pinpointed at this time by ESPN. So I think there's a good chance if they're going to replace A.J. Brown, it likely is on day 1 or early on in day 2. And Mark's point was, well, yeah, they should do that. But if they do, it's really going to hurt their leverage for an AJ Brown trade in June, because if you trade up for a wide receiver like Jordan Tyson or Omar Cooper, if you take that guy in the first round, you almost have no choice now but to trade AJ Brown. Like, there is almost no way he comes back at that point in that scenario where he's got to share the football with Devontae Smith, a first round pick, Dallas Goedert. They're going to run the football a lot still with Saquon Barkley. They signed Hollywood Brown. Like, that's just not going to happen. At that point, you've kind of showed your hand that you're going to trade AJ. And at that point, it's like, you don't either. If you're the Eagles, you don't want your day one pick to be like the fourth option in your passing game behind AJ, Devontae, Goddard, maybe at times Hollywood Brown. Like, you don't want Jordan Tyson to be the 4A, 4B kind of guy in your offense if you're going to trade up for that guy in the first round. So at that point, it's like, why would a team give you a first and second round pick in 2027 for AJ when they know that you got to get rid of him? And I don't disagree with that point from Mark. Actually, I never even really thought about that. It's a really good point, and it adds a different wrinkle to this super interesting, like, complicated trade situation, because you have to trade him post June 1st, unless you want to eat the $40 million so your leverage is maintained, which I don't know if the Eagles will be willing to do that. But if not, like, yeah, your leverage could get hurt by that if you do a move up for Jordan Tyson or Omar Cooper, or whoever you like. But I think you still got to do it, right? You still got to target that receiver on day one. And if it's New England specifically that's trying to play hardball, you have to hold your ground. Like, you have to do all you can in this leverage war to win that battle, because it's not like the Patriots have great leverage either, especially after the Rossini stuff and AJ clearly wanting to be there and just fanboying over the New England Patriots all offseason. So I think even if that happens where the Eagles trade up for a receiver and it feels like your leverage was hurt, Howie cannot back down, though. Like, he has to find a way to win that battle, especially if it's against the Patriots, because if not, like, let's say the Eagles trade AJ Brown to New England, right? So Mike Vrabel gets his way and everybody's pissed off at Vrabel and Rossini and AJ Brown, who gets to go to his favorite team. Howie would have the fan base furious if he dealt New England AJ Brown for, let's say, DJ Moore kind of compensation. It's a second round pick to a 2 and a 3. If it's anything less than the Jalen Waddle return, which the Denver Broncos gave Miami a first and third round pick for Waddle, especially if it's to the Patriots, like, Howie cannot do that. The fan base will not accept that. And again, the Patriots, they don't have great leverage either. So it's kind of a who's going to blink first situation. And if you're the Eagles, you just can't afford that if you're New England. Hopefully, what could happen to help your leverage, to kind of help even things out if you do trade up for a receiver, is you taking a receiver from another wide receiver needy team could get a couple other teams in on the AJ Brown sweepstakes after the draft if the board just doesn't fall right and those teams don't get the pass catchers they want, right? Like, let's say the Baltimore Ravens, they want that receiver and they don't get them in the draft. Let's say the Buffalo Bills say, you know what? Yeah, we gave up a second round pick for DJ Moore. Like, we made our big move, but we need to get Josh Allen a Super Bowl right now. F it. Let's go all in and pair AJ Brown with DJ Moore and Khalil Shakir. Let's give the Eagles our 2027 first round pick, which we know is going to be a late pick anyway, because the Bills are constantly making deep playoff runs. What if the Bills revisit that? Like, I don't think that's still out of the realm of possibilities. Buffalo called the Eagles about AJ before they did the DJ Moore trade. What about the Los Angeles Rams? Like, if they don't get a receiver in the first round, let's say they go with a corner or an edge rusher, let's say they go with a different position, maybe they revisit the AJ Brown trade at some point. Yeah, trade talks have died right now, but that doesn't mean they can't start up again, especially if they're as close as Adam Schefter was insinuating they were to getting a deal done. Maybe the Rams get back in on this thing. What about the Los Angeles Chargers? What if, they want to trade Quentin Johnston and a draft pick in next year's draft for AJ and give, they've had some really good weapons for Justin Herbert over the past couple of years, but they've never really had that true alpha number one for Justin Herbert. Maybe the Chargers could get back in on it. Depending on the draft, there could be more takers that aren't just New England. So that could really help. But regardless of what happens, especially after this Dianna Russini-Mike Vrabel story, Howie Roseman cannot take anything less than the Jalen Waddle deal for AJ Brown if he's going to go to New England. And I still think there's a very good chance that he's a Patriot. If I was placing the odds on FanDuel of what team AJ plays for in 2026, I still say it's the New England Patriots, but Howie's got to hold his ground because the fan base right now, they're acting like they won the Super Bowl. Like they are really reveling in this apparent victory they have over New England, over Rossini, over the A.J. Brown trade rumors. And if you trade him to the Patriots, they're going to be devastated. They're going to be pissed. You got to make sure at least you have a first-round pick and another high day 2 selection to at least show, look, you're not happy with me, but I brought you home something else to enjoy. So that's where I see the leverage wars at right now between the Eagles and the Patriots. Here's one thing, though. We're talking a lot about replacing A.J. Brown and adding receivers to this roster. Coming up next, I want to talk about why the Eagles do not need to add a wide receiver 1 if they trade away A.J. Brown. They need to add a receiver, but it doesn't have to be a wide receiver 1. But first, today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast, we are presented by TurboTax. It's tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is it's a lot. Trying to book an appointment that's not the most convenient, sitting in a waiting room with, stacks of papers, emailing back and forth and wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now is in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents can get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app right on the spot. And just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar that you deserve, while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in and meeting a real person and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. Head to turbotax.com/local to find a store near you and to book your appointment. Right, wrapping up this Thursday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen each and every day. It's really interesting. I think a lot of us are discussing specific wide receiver prospects, certain kind of trades. We're all preparing to replace A.J. Brown at wide receiver. I think we all know, they're going to need to add somebody else. Like Hollywood Brown should not be the wide receiver 2 in any scenario in 2026. Like that just, to me, cannot happen. I really like the Hollywood signing. I love his style. To be this wide receiver 3 in this offense, I think is perfect. But to be the second guy, not happy with that. Would not be comfortable at all. So they do need to add another receiver, and I would love for it to be in the first round. I would love for them to trade for somebody like Brian Thomas Jr. But here's the one thing that I think people are kind of getting wrong. They don't need to add, and I talked about it yesterday, like maybe they want to add an A.J. Brown type, a big-bodied, do-it-all, true X wide receiver. And I would like that too, to complement the style of receivers you have with Devontae Smith and with Hollywood Brown. But I think people are acting like they need to add a wide receiver 1, though. Like they need to make sure the guy they bring in can replace A.J. Brown's production. Maybe not, like I want him to replace A.J. Brown's style of play, but they don't need to replace A.J. Brown's production. The Eagles have that already. His name is Devontae Smith. Like when it comes to production, when it comes to being the featured go-to receiver in this offense, the guy that the passing game is going to run through, that to me is Devontae Smith. And I don't get why people are uncomfortable. I still see people out there that refer to Devontae as a wide receiver 2, and that the guy they bring in needs to be the number 1 guy in this attack. Like, I don't understand that. Is it simply just because Devontae hasn't been that guy yet in the NFL since 2000? I mean, he was once in 2021 as a rookie, and he was a great rookie. Broke Deshaun Jackson's single season rookie receiving yards record that year. But since then, he's always been a wide receiver 2, and he's put up solid seasons over 1,000 yards at this point. Multiple times, 2022, 2023, and 2025. So 3 times in 5 years, he's had over 1,000 yards. And in 2021, he had over 900. But he's never had that season A.J. Brown had in 2022 or 2023 for, over 1,400 yards on the year. So maybe people think just because he hasn't done it yet that he's not that guy. They just have viewed him for years now as a wide receiver 2. So that's just the way they think of him. But like, what about Devontae's game, though? Or what have you seen on the field from Devontae says he can't be the number 1 guy? Like, that's where I push back. Because when you think about Devontae Smith's game, he's a tier 1 route runner in football. He is one of the best route runners in the NFL. Whether you're pressing him at the line of scrimmage, whether you're playing off coverage, he has answers for everything. And he always has since he won the Heisman at Alabama. He is one of the best deep threats in the NFL, which is a very underrated part of his game. I know DeVonta Smith isn't the heaviest, tallest receiver in the world, but he is one of the best contested catch players in football. When you add his hands, his elite hands to his elite body control and the crazy length that he has. Like, yeah, maybe DeVonta is not 6'3", 6'4", but he has a really long wingspan. He could go up and high point the football. So he's a great deep threat. He's a great route runner. He's a great contested catch guy, some of the best body control and hands in football. He's also one of the most clutch playoff and big game performers in the league. DeVonta is the all-time leading receiver in Eagles playoff history. Like, what part of DeVonta's game makes you doubt that if AJ is traded, he can't step into that wide receiver one role? I don't understand it. Like, yes, he's a different kind of player than AJ. Is he as physically dominating as AJ Brown? Does he just pop on the screen like AJ does every time he's out there? You see where number 11 is on the field. Maybe not, but like, I don't get it. I think next year, if DeVonta Smith is the number one guy, he can have a 1,400 yard season. I think he could be what Jackson Smith-Njigba was for the Seahawks in 2025. I think Smitty is absolutely capable of being that player. And I think just look at his first half tape of this season, and that'll tell you all you need to know. He was playing like an all-pro the first 8 games of the year before the Eagles kind of flipped the script and featured A.J. Brown the rest of the way through the passing game to appease him and to keep him happy. Before that, though, DeVonta was the number one, and he looked like an all-pro receiver. So I'd be more than happy with a day 2 kind of player that fills a specific role as a wide receiver too, like a Chris Brazzell, who's a tall, deep threat. Maybe he'll never be a true number one guy, but again, you have that with Smitty. Maybe you want to add a niche. Is it niche? I don't know. But you want to add that like a specific style of wide receiver too. Maybe you want to add a really tall, explosive deep threat like Brazzell. Maybe you want to add an elite slot receiver like Antonio Williams from the University of Clemson, who I took this past mock draft Monday. I think that's okay. Like, I'd love to take another guy that could be a complete wide receiver one. I think when you have 2 of those players, like A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith, it makes you so dangerous. So would I love to get Jordan Tyson that has wide receiver one kind of potential, or Omar Cooper Jr.? I think Ted Hurst from Georgia State, Chris Bell from Louisville, they have that kind of potential as well. Like, I'd prefer to take that route. But if they add a receiver in the draft and it's not that number one do-it-all kind of guy, if it's more of a 1 or 2 trick pony like a Chris Brazzell or an Antonio Williams, or maybe it's even like a Zachariah Branch from Georgia. Maybe you're looking for just this speed demon to play in the slot. I'm okay with that. Like, I don't hate that because they have DeVonta Smith. If they didn't have DeVonta Smith and they had to trade A.J. Brown, well, then, yeah, I'm going all for the guy that can do everything, that can be that number one. But I think the Eagles have that. And I feel like the majority of us agree with that sentiment about DeVonta Smith. But everybody, I feel like, still isn't fully on board. And I'm really excited for the DeVonta Smith I Told You So show this year in 2026. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen each and every day. Until our bonus show later on, thanks so much for downloading, watching, and listening. And let's go, Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.